Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. We're so excited to have you all here for what promises to be a really thoughtful and energizing conversation. So today we're going to be talking about three mission-driven platforms and a mission-driven funder that are transforming non-degree pathways for youth. So this conversation is a timely one, and I dare say that this one is a discussion that hits close to home for many of us who have children or nieces or nephews or other kids in our lives that are embarking on their career journeys soon. So together we'll dig in today to strategies and collaborations and tech platforms and tools that help young people make really informed career decisions and accessing those high opportunity jobs, even without a four-year degree. So whether you work directly with youth or you fund workforce solutions or you're part of a tech platform that supports career development, this conversation is for you. Over the next 45 minutes, we're going to hear from an incredible group of leaders. Their work is heavily focused on this youth space, putting those young people onto the path toward high opportunity careers. So I'm going to introduce our conversationalists for today. We have Marie Grork, Managing Director at the Schultz Family Foundation, James Cryan, Founder and CEO of Willow Education, Lee Waldvogel, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at American Student Assistance, apologies, ASA for short. And we've got Elisa Salas, hosting and facilitating and leading today's conversation. Elisa is the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Operations at SkillUp, and she brings deep expertise in building these programs and partnerships and centering equity and access and impact for STARS, folks who are skilled through alternative routes. And today we're going to focus on the youth. So Elisa, the floor is yours, and welcome to all of our panelists.
Thanks, Faye. And again, thank you all for being here today. I'm thrilled to be leading this conversation, not only as the leader of the partnership function where I get to be in relationship with these fine panelists, but also as a former middle school and high school educator. I've been in the position of directly supporting young people into their transition into adulthood, and excited and thrilled to hear a little bit more from our partners. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'd like to first start out with Lee from ASA. So you all have been a national leader in helping students navigate the post-secondary landscape. Curious to hear a little bit more about what you think is most effective career readiness. What does it look like for the next generation of job seekers?
Sure. Thanks, Elisa. Yeah, and just a quick thank you to all the other panelists and the folks who have tuned in. I'm very glad to be here. To answer the question, as far as the next generation of job seekers are concerned, overall, I think we need to effectively start younger. So much of the conversation largely revolves around, late high school and thinking about what post-secondary planning looks like. ASA for a long time, through the research that we've done and others have indicated that if we're not starting as early as middle school, we may be missing the boat. So it's really critical to start the conversation earlier. And I think that's, as we think about how we can be more effective at it, starting those conversations and changing the way that we're talking about career readiness at that early stage. Perhaps a shift from what do you want to be when you grow up to what is it that that really gets you excited, or what makes your heart sing. I think those are really important things that we can start to have conversations with earlier and earlier, because we all know you can't be what you can't see. And I think the other thing that as far as expectations for future job seekers, the only other thing I'll add is that ultimately, and one of the reasons why we're so excited to be partnered with SkillUp, is that we're not just focused on traditional pathways, or college is the only option. There are so many tremendous paths that students can take, and if we're not starting earlier, and if we're not having those conversations about the multiple pathways that the kids can see before them and choose, then I think we're missing out there too. So I think just highlighting that, and the only other thing I'll add is that personalization is going to change the game as it relates to career readiness, and ensuring that we can match up the right options with the youth as they're trying to make their plans.
Thanks, Lee. I think that is actually a point to hit on for us as well at SkillUp. One of the pieces that was really excited, we were really excited about partnering with ASA is because you guys start earlier. So traditionally at SkillUp, we have really focused on young people between the ages of 16 and 24, and the bulk of which have actually been 18 to 24. So really that post-high school age. But with our partnership, we have dramatically increased the number of young people that are between the ages of 14 to 16 on our platform, and we're grateful for being able to have that channel. Would love to just turn it over to Marie from the Schultz Family Foundation. You all have invested deeply in youth-focused workforce initiatives. I'm curious to hear a little bit more what you have seen as some of the most effective strategies for helping young people succeed in non-degree pathways.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to answer that question, and really want to build, I think, both on what you said and then also what Lee said. I think Lee made a really great point about not only the need to start earlier, but the importance of understanding and young people understanding both their purpose, and enabling them to be exposed to careers. We've been kind of coining a phrase around here around teaching young people to be a career entrepreneur. So often when we do this work, we think about how do we get a young person into a specific pathway or a specific occupation. But I think we all know from our own careers and for the careers of those around us that oftentimes it's about understanding how do we learn and grow over the course of a career and be able to move and navigate as the workforce shifts. So that's one thing we think about a lot. I think the other thing is, and why we so deeply appreciate our partnership with SkillUp, is that because things are shifting all the time, we all also have to have an entrepreneurial mindset in terms of the work we do and how we approach this work. And so I think most of my best learnings have come through conversations with SkillUp, who they're constantly, your team is constantly iterating and learning and sharing that with the field. And I think that's really what we all need to do. So when I share effective strategies, we can footnote SkillUp in many of these. But I think the most important thing is to remember that we need to meet young people where they are. Oftentimes we as experts or educators, we know what we want young people to learn, and we start with those 5 things, as opposed to recognizing where young people are and enabling them to be on a journey that might get to at least a few of those things. One of the things that the team at SkillUp noted for us early on, especially during the COVID years, is the risk averseness of many young people. And, that is for many reasons. It's because of the financial cost. It's because of social media pressures, but they're nervous about taking a risk. They're nervous about committing too deeply. And so oftentimes they're not committing at all. And how do we help acknowledge that real fear that young people have? And again, support them on a path. The other thing we've seen in effective solutions is those that really understand how to balance human connection and technology. And I think this is something we're all still trying to figure out, especially in the age of AI, where and how to do that. And so this is where we all have to learn together, but really understanding how those two things balance each other. And then the last thing I would note is the power of social capital. Harvard's Career on the Workforce put out a super interesting study last week, not necessarily about young people, but about navigation overall, and really emphasized social capital, and that most folks find jobs through their friends. Now, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what kind of job. You're a frontline worker, you're finding your job through a friend, or you're a career professional with a master's degree, you're often finding a job through a friend. So really understanding the power of social capital and embedding that into our work, I think, is critical.
Thanks, Marie. The observation of meeting young people where they are and starting earlier and connecting it back to Lee, having young people even dare to dream, right? I mean, I think when there's a moment, if you start later, particularly in a labor market that is uncertain, the ability to carry risk is challenging. But if you're starting earlier, if you're recognizing that young people are coming with different assets and fears and talents, there's a lot more room. And I think at SkillUp, that's been a lesson that we've learned as well. I think also having a tech platform where you want the user journey to be highly linear and scalable, recognizing that not every journey, in fact, most are not predictable or linear. And so I think that's a tension that we've also wrestled with at SkillUp. James, on to you and the platform that you have built at Willow Education. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more how your tool is ensuring that there are not just one career option, but is able to serve you know, a diverse set of learners with clear, connected next steps.
Awesome. Well, echo everyone's thanks. It's a real privilege to be here, and thanks for joining us in the conversation. And Lee and Marie, it's great to be with you as well. I think maybe it's helpful to ground what we're trying to do at Willow, and we're about 2.5 years in. We're pretty young and early. In my experience as an educator coming out of K-12, I was a teacher and then started and led a charter school network called Rocky Mountain Prep. So I joke that I'm a recovering charter network CEO and founder. And what I saw when I was a systems leader within Denver is that we worked pretty hard to get kids mostly into college. And that was kind of the track that we felt most confident in and comfortable with. However, the data wasn't really backing that up, that that's the best path for all, or maybe even most kids. So in Denver, what that looked like is the majority of students who graduate Denver public schools and go on to college, the majority of those students are first in their families to do so. And the majority of those students go to a local institution called Metro. And Metro, any guesses maybe in the chat of what the on-time graduation rate for a first-generation student at Metro is? Everyone, let's play a little sad quiz game here. Kim, thanks. Layla, 15, 20. John, 10. Hi, Scott. Hi, Joe. You guys are too close to the work. So the correct answer is Augustine's answer, 9%. And less than 25% will graduate within 6 years. So as a systems leader coming out of K-12, I was like, what the F are we doing? And then after we got done being mad at Metro and trying to stop kids from going there, especially students who are first in their family to go to college, there's an obvious question. Where are students being successful as they connect to quality jobs? And so I see my job and Willow's job as really reverse engineering K-12 and helping K-12, as Marie's point, meet students where they are in order to be able to achieve what they want, which is a quality job, a good career, and a post-secondary credential. And so we started by building a platform that mostly worked with high school seniors. And we would help students right at that decision point. And we had two big innovations. One is that we were highly opinionated about quality and brought as much data to bear around what we could to project out an expected return on investment for that student within that specific program. And our second big innovation is that we mapped college pathways, which many platforms within our work do. And we also mapped not college pathways. And we were able to do that with our partnership with you, Elisa, and SkillUp, in order to take your training catalog, enrich some of the data, and try and surface what are the strongest programs and providers within a student's local context. Since then, Lee, to your point around what gets students excited and you can't be what you can't see, our partners have been asking us to go earlier and earlier and earlier. So now we work with, right now we're 9-12 with most of our partners. Our partners are asking us for middle school content. And the other big shift we've made is we've started seeing this, at least for the K-12 facing work, started seeing this less as a tech platform solution that's needed and more as a curriculum that's needed and a set of experiences to help educators guide their students through in order to get the most out of it. And our platform is still every day a part of that experience, and it personalizes it and enables it to be far more effective. But the curriculum helps scaffold and set the right mental model for educators of how we should approach this.
Yeah, James, I think just touching on that last point and connecting back to Marie's kind of human connection is that the curriculum coupled with the platform allows for the additional care and context and support that a young person needs, right, off the platform. And that is actually one of the major reasons why we love partnering with you all, is because there are limits to our platform. We have great partnerships with Inside Track and some other coaching platforms that are supporting our work. But by allowing us to kind of integrate into your platform, we're able to serve far more students alongside the incredible classroom teachers and guidance counselors that are supporting the work. So appreciate that additional context that you are setting for us. Great. Let's turn it back over to Lee. So Lee, we are also partnered with you. Like I said earlier, really driving a lot of traffic over to us from the 14 to 16-year-old space. Not only have you been an incredible channel partner for us, the young people that come to our site from Evolve Me are incredibly more engaged. And we suspect it has to do with some of the ways that you have set up your navigation. And so would love to hear a little bit more about how Evolve Me has leveraged gamification and other experiences on the platform that have been working for young people.
Yeah. So we're equally as excited about the results so far, Lisa, and for all the reasons that the other James and Marie have mentioned. I think I'll just start with, when ASA thinks about resources and meeting kids where they are, et cetera, we always start with the research and what is it that teens and kids are actually telling us about the types of experiences that they want to see and be involved in, and not to make career readiness this big overarching worry, but instead to break it apart and find ways to deliver an experience that kids can really embrace. And quite honestly, that doesn't look or feel so different from the other ways that they spend their time, especially digitally. And I think for us, and certainly we've seen this play out with the results through our partnership with SkillUp and with other folks as a part of our ecosystem on Evolve Me. It starts with things like gamification and breaking up the experience into more snackable bites. So as a user, a teen comes through, they're not worried about, well, what is it that I'm going to do? How do I choose the right path, et cetera? You make it more modular and create milestones for teens to achieve over time. And at the same time, you award them points or some sort of an incentive, whether it be, it can be gift cards, it can be whatever it is that motivates them. We chose gift cards because that's what teens told us through surveying and researching with thousands of teens. But those two pieces are really important, both the gamification and then, as a result, the incentivization, but also just breaking up the experience into a more modular one. And I think, all of that, we could have looked at the marketplace and thought, well, what have others done, historically here, and who's doing it well? But then we paused and said, well, let's ask teens, what is it that they actually want? And I think back to what Marie mentioned of meeting teens where they are, kids where they are. And to James's point around, what data are we using to determine whether or not things are successful or not, whether it be college going rates or otherwise. Let's bring the highest quality and the best data possible to make these decisions and make sure that we're building an experience that is not only equitable for the users that we're bringing in, but also honors the experience that they want to have. As they make their way through a platform. And the results, as you mentioned, Elisa, they speak for themselves.
And I actually would love if you can share a little bit more. I know that Evolve Me as the platform has also facilitated a broader initiative at ASA around teen voice. And so I'm curious if you might be able to just talk a little bit more about that and the kind of the relationship between the platform and the research that you all have been able to do at Teen Voice for our audience here.
Yeah, of course. I think so. Again, back to the sort of the baseline point, which is, we need to be actually asking teens. One of the things that we found is, in the years of building platforms and doing research, with younger audiences, is it's pretty hard to do it right? How do you find, a large set of, nationally representative teens or focusing on specific demographics or otherwise, so you can get true sort of honest and specific feedback directly from teens and not parents, not guidance counselors, not that those aren't also valuable, but there's something inherently unique about hearing directly from a teen. I think for us, what we've done in the launch of Teen Voice is to help make that more accessible for other organizations to access those types of insights. And in sort of mutual design with the Evolve Me platform, it happens in a very natural and organic way. So I think that's the kind of innovation that brings more actionable and authentic insights from the users that we actually want to build around and keep at the center. That's really the genesis for what we've done with Teen Voice and what we're excited about there. But I will say that the more for the field overall, I mean, the more we can do that and keep students at the center, from design to messaging, et cetera. It's good to know we need more pipe fitters, but how do we make pipe fitting exciting for teens?
Yeah.
Right? How do we tell that story effectively?
Yeah, and I think going back to the point earlier around just like our definition of what is youth. I mean, I think our reflection as we've kind of dug a little bit deeper in creating our platform is that there really are multiple segments, right? How you serve a 14-year-old or a 16-year-old is dramatically different than how you serve a 23-year-old. But oftentimes in the conversation, we kind of lump youth into this broad bucket, and there's quite a bit of span of life that is happening between those years. And so having young people at the center, not only influencing the platform, but the broader research in the field is super critical.
Yeah.
James, I want to turn it back over to you. I do know that you did a lot of user research, paper testing, in partnership with DSST. I'm also curious, though, just, we know that youth engagement isn't a one-size-fits-all strategy. And so just curious how, in addition to the curriculum, are there key pieces that are making kind of career exploration more relevant and empowering for young people?
Yeah, I mean, to be totally transparent, the curriculum was a response to worries we had about low engagement, especially with, we saw our best teachers and educators and counselors like taking our tool and running with it and building great experiences around that. And then schools are very busy places, and it's easy to get lost in the shuffle, as anyone who's been near a school or worked in a school knows. And so we were worried about engagement, and the curriculum is a strategy to improve that. And then, you can't replace the value of human connection. And we talked about that. And if I can digress for a second, one of the stories I love the most from that experience of piloting with DSST has been a great partner of ours. They're a very successful charter school network in the Colorado area. There was a kid, let's call him Alfonso. And DSST is still pretty focused on college for all. And it's why a lot of families and students are choosing them. And they wanted to work with us to expand quality options for students who didn't want to go to college. Alfonso was one of those students. And when the college counselor went looking for him, he would literally run the other way. He's like, I don't like school. I'm not successful in school. I've got an IEP. I just don't like it. It's not working for me. I work at Wendy's after school because I need to support my mom and little sister. And you know what? My post-secondary plan is to pick up more hours at Wendy's. Period. Full stop. Leave me alone. The counselor one day caught him and said, we're doing this work with Willow. Part of it is surfacing and exploring high quality professional programs. That's what we call everything that's not a bachelor's. Would you be interested? And he said, sure. He wasn't very enthusiastic, but fine, let's do it. And so Charles, went through our process, took our assessment, reflected on what he thought his values and mission and purpose might be, and then explored different programs. And he got really excited about a pre-apprenticeship program at a great, fantastic organization in Denver called Cross Purpose. Many of you have heard of Cross Purpose. And his mom and he and the counselor went to tour do a college visit at Cross Purpose. I think it was their first ever college type visit they had hosted. And ended up enrolling there with a few other students. And 6 months later, he was graduating, and I asked the counselor, hey, how's Alfonso doing? Give me an update. And he couldn't, we didn't hear back for a week or two. Finally, we did. And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I've had too many job interviews. I don't know which one to take." And he took a job doing advanced manufacturing, making almost 50K as an apprentice. And at the end of his apprenticeship program, the entry-level roles that they can't find enough qualified people for in that company start at 90K. So he's on a totally different trajectory because of this work and because of the hustle and persistence of the educator who kept after him and convinced him to engage here. And I say that because I don't think you can't replace that trusted human adult or near peer in a young person's life to the point around social capital. Like, it matters so much. And we've seen that. The way we've also tried to like talk to a lot of young people and talk about what's going to be most engaging. And one thing that I'll just speak to quickly is that when we rolled it out, we said, if this doesn't work, we don't know what will. And we were like, you need to move on. And so we have curated thousands of really great videos from social media content that are tagged to Creative Commons and of just people talking about their jobs. What do I love about my job? What sucks about my job? What do I wish I knew when I signed up for this? How did I get into it? What do I actually make? Students love that one. And then we've tagged all of those to Department of Labor ONET codes. And so after a student does our assessment, we can serve them videos of, here's our quality jobs. We rank them all against the JFF quality job framework. Here are quality jobs in your zip code that are entry level and accessible through a variety of different post-secondary pathways that might be of interest. And Lee, we love that line, like, you can't be what you can't see. This is a really lightweight way for students to explore and engage in a way that they're comfortable. Because early on when we started, when we were asking young people what information do you trust? They said, we trust Reddit and we trust social media, TikTok videos, because those are real people telling their stories. It's not marketing stuff that I get overwhelmed with. And so that's what we've kind of doubled down on, and our students and partners, thank goodness, are enjoying it. So we're going to keep going.
I so appreciate the point about not only what you love, but what you don't love, right? The authenticity. Like, I mean, teenagers will tell you the truth real quick, so they can sniff out what is authentic and what is not. And so I think, like, hitting on that, James, was, I mean, I imagine you understand that from your days as an educator yourself, but that really resonated with me. And also, thank you for sharing the story. Oftentimes I think in these conversations we are, this conversation is about platforms and it's about tech, and I think that the value of being able to really bring it to life with a true story of a young person who was trying to make his way, and Cross Purpose is also listed in our catalog, as you know, and we're big fans. So it really speaks to the power of that human connection.
Can I just build quickly? Sorry,
yeah.
On that point you were making, Elisa, of like, we know and believe it is just as valuable for students to figure out what they don't like in terms of jobs and careers as a bucket or basket of jobs that they might be interested in. I think it's important for all of us to hold that in mind. And I think it was you, Lee, who mentioned this earlier. Like, it's not about like picking one job and then driving towards that, or no, it was you, Marie, because that's just not how life works. It's more being exposed and having a set of like, I might be interested in this stuff and this is cool. And here's how I can start to work into that and pivot into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think the other piece related to James, the story, we often talk about at SkillUp that we want the path to, alternative routes, if you want to call them that, to be and the path to choosing one to be as rigorous as your approach to choosing a 4-year degree. And there's so much structure, there's so much support around the 4-year pathway. And we believe that these other pathways are just as worthy. And not just because there's dollars attached to them, but because the work is important, the work is needed, and that young people can find themselves in that. And so also appreciate you sharing that.
100%. I'm going to say one more thing and then I'm going to go on mute.
It looked like you were going to, so I'm going to pause.
I mean, 62% of Americans over the age of 25 62% of Americans over the age of 25 do not have a bachelor's degree. And our systems largely are not designed to support that group of adults. And so I think we have underinvested in that as a society, and we need to do a lot more in K-12 and all of our other systems to build a system around that. Okay, I'm gonna shut up, I promise.
Oh, no worries. I mean, I think it's resonating in the chat as well. So there's no need to shut up. But thank you for sharing that particular personal story. Marie, let's go ahead and shift over to you as the funder on the call. Would love to hear just a little bit more from you about, you know, funders do have a big role to play in what gets scaled and what gets built. And so just curious to hear kind of how funders can support the higher quality pathways and prioritizing career navigation for young people.
Yeah, happy to share a few thoughts on this. I think one of the things that Jane's story alluded to, and that we've heard in our own research with young people, and really appreciate all Lee said about teen voice and really using the voice of young people to influence how you do your work, is this idea of what we're calling a broken marketplace, which are deep disconnects between K-12, post-secondary, and employers. And oftentimes, as a funder and as someone who's always looking for great tools and initiatives, what we find is that folks work within silos, right? They're often working within K-12 or they're working within post-secondary. And it's that bridge to the other system that we know is very difficult and yet doesn't happen, perhaps because it's very difficult, but it's that disconnect between and across these systems where our young people struggle the most, and where we're not sending necessarily clear signals. And that's why I appreciated James's story, because it felt like that young person was able to navigate all the way right through to the employer because of the bridges that had been connected across those silos. And so when I think about the role of, given that reality, when I think about the role of funders, I think of us as conveners, not just obviously in deploying capital, and I can talk about that in a minute, but also as conveners. The reason why so many times we work within a silo is because we don't necessarily have the connections or the social networks to bridge those silos. And yet, as a funder, we should be able to do that. That should be something that we can address in our work. And so honestly, I think as we should be asked to do that, honestly. Oftentimes the power imbalance doesn't allow for those kinds of conversations, but I think we should, as funders, be open to those conversations and understand the power and influence that we can have in this setting, and not just think of ourselves as the purveyors of capital. So that's the first thing that I would say. The second is we also recognize that while AI is incredibly powerful at addressing some of these issues that we've talked about today, there are deep gaps in both human capital and financial capital for especially the nonprofit sector to harness AI and to be able to have the kind of impact that I think we all want to have. And so when I think about our work, it's recognizing that, and it's really thinking about how do we address that as a field, as a sector. One of the things many of us saw who attended ASU GSV earlier this month is that there are a lot of for-profit folks that are beginning to see the opportunity in navigation. I did not attend a certain session, but someone said like 3/4 of the new tech is all about navigation. I don't know if that's true or not. It seems like a lot. But I think for those of us who have been around in the ed tech space, we all know that success isn't going to come from just a great tech idea. It's going to be how do we bring the expertise as those of us who have worked with young people for a long time and bridge it with the great human capital, financial capital required to do that. And so perhaps that's another connector element, but really thinking about how we do that, in a way that actually achieves results. And so that's kind of how we're thinking about this space. Again, bullish on AI, but I think it was Steve Lee at SkillUp that just posted something yesterday about what SkillUp has learned in terms of working with AI, and reminded us it's not the silver bullet that we want it to be. It doesn't mean that we can't harness it for good, but it's going to take a lot of learning, iterating, and collaborating across sectors to get us where we need to go.
Thanks, Marie. On the point of collaborating across sectors, I'm wondering actually if you could talk a little bit more about the work that you've done with the American Opportunity Index, in part because it's now something that we have pulled into our platform. And I think how we engage employers in kind of this broken marketplace, right, where young people are trying to navigate towards their next step and next job. We haven't talked a lot about employers on this call. And so I'm curious, if we can just go a little bit deeper and share with the audience what you've learned and really actually where you're going with AOI.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that, and thanks for noting it. So, given our DNA, we're from the tree of Starbucks. Employers are always front and center in our minds. I think our leadership long thought of the Starbucks as a pathway to opportunity, a first step to opportunity, and really focused on being intentional about how to make that happen. So that has been part of what we've done since we started. But what we found, and I think when we first started, we really believed that a job could be transformational, and we were agnostic about the job. Just the idea that someone working could create a sense of self-efficacy, of agency, and be on a path to economic mobility. And when we studied, we launched an initiative called 100,000 Opportunities that was really designed to connect young people to jobs. And what we found when we did that was that the outcomes were stark among young people. That for some young people, and I think in the study that we did, it was about half, literally just half and half did go on to better paying jobs. For half of those young people, this was a pathway to economic mobility. But for half, young people churned in entry-level positions. And one of the statistics that has long stayed with me is that the average work experience of someone in an entry-level job is 7 years. So that just reminds me that there are two worlds out there. There is a churning in the entry-level position where folks cannot get out. And oftentimes when we hear those stories, we think we put the burden on the person who's churning. Oh, maybe they don't come to work on time. Maybe they got in a fight with a customer. When in fact, when you study it, what you see is that there are some companies that are better at putting their employees on a path to upward mobility than others. For some companies, they've realized it's part of who they are, how their business model, how they make money, frankly, is actually managing their talent well. And so in working with employers, and for those of you who work with employers, like it can be a slog, right? You find like your one superstar champion and then they quit, and then you have to find someone else, and it can be difficult. And so what we thought was, what if we kind of created an air game to the ground game? What if we tried to highlight companies that were really good at this to create conversation, so the champion that you have within an employer has wind against their sails? When they go to talk to their boss, they can say, hey, look at this American Opportunity Index. And so we created this ranking of American companies. You can go to AmericanOpportunityIndex.org and look at companies that have been ranked based on how well they create opportunity for their employees. The number one company this year is a company called Grainger, which is remarkable. And if you talk to Grainger, yes, this is intentional. They build in this idea of upward mobility into everything that they do. So if a young person came to James or was on the Evolve Me platform with Lee, we'd want them to know, hey, if you want us to get a job, you should look at a company like Grainger. And so that's why we're so excited that SkillUp has integrated the American Opportunity Index into their work. But we also recognize that what a good job looks like varies across your career. There are good jobs that are great as launchpad jobs. That means you don't have a lot of experience. You may not have a lot of education. It's a great place to start a career. We also know that there are some jobs that are great mobility jobs. Okay, you've been working for 2 or 3 years. This is a job that can be an escalator. They're going to give you tons of experience and opportunity for promotion. And then we also know there are times in your life where you're actually not looking for a promotion, where really what you want is a stable job. Maybe you have a robust family life, you have other things going on, and you just need some level of consistency and stability. You want to feel fulfilled, and you also want to know that you're going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. And so those are stability jobs. And so what we're going to do moving forward with the American Opportunity Index is we will actually start to rate, not just rank companies, but rate companies based on those job quality types. And so that will enable a SkillUp to be able to isolate, not just, a Starbucks or a Chipotle may be good at one type of those jobs, but not all three. So to really isolate and give clear information to users about who and what the best companies are to work for. The other thing we realized, and this kind of gets into gamification, I feel like I've learned this lesson before when I was working in gamification, learned it again, which is ranking works really well for companies that do well. So when you have any kind of leaderboard, people who love a leaderboard the most are those people that are in, like, let's say the top 25 or the top 50 or the top 100. Anywhere below that, it's not even encouraging people to try to get from 500 to 100. Oftentimes it's like, their methodology must be bad, or we would be in the top 100. So we're really thinking much more moving forward about a rating, not a ranking. So something much closer to sort of like a lead standard where you could be platinum or gold or just not rated, as a way to encourage and encourage more companies to engage. And then the last thing we've been thinking about is really thinking about the occupation level. One thing we look at in the data is that even a Grainger, which is a great company, there may be some occupations for which they are better suited as an engine of economic mobility than others. And so how do we give that level of specificity to the users? And how do we work with folks like SkillUp to think about how do we get that data to folks in a way that is actually useful to them? I think all of us have been in education for a while. We know the answer isn't just data. And I loved what James said about like Reddit and social media. And I say we cannot overestimate the influence that social media has on young people, for good or for bad. We can't underestimate the lack of influence adults, that have been charged to do this work have on young people. And I think we can also, it's easy for us to overestimate the power of data on how young people make choices. But I think we can think about how do we get this data in the arms of adults or technology or other things, so that we know and we're able to tee up opportunities for young people that put this data to work.
Thanks, Maria. I know we went off script a little bit on the AOI example, but I just thought it was such a good example of how you are really using your role as funder to convene and bring sectors that have been traditionally so siloed together for young people. So we are coming up on time, everyone. Just want to kind of recap and summarize. There was a wide range of conversation today, from Lee making the starting us out with the point around engaging young people early, the role of really engaging gamified navigation system and meeting learners where they are. To James sharing the power of human connection, particularly how we best leverage educators in schools, and making sure that we are making all pathways visible to young people. And then, of course, Marie, with all of your support on convening these sectors and silos that have traditionally been separate, so that we were able to make navigation much more transparent and accessible for young people. So appreciate everyone today on the panel and all of those who joined us and were engaged in the chat. Should you want to have any additional information or partnership, please look to each of our sites. That is SkillUp, ASA, the Schultz Family Foundation, and Willow Education. Thank you all. Be well.